I saw the comment made the other day that Tron Lightcycle Power Run is one of the best themed coasters ever created. I then thought to myself, is it? It certainly looks like a fun attraction, but its strength, like Space Mountain, seems to be its sense of atmosphere, and the fun comes from the actual coaster layout itself. As far as theming goes, there's not really much to see. It's mostly lighting effects and a single distinct scene that has riders dueling a couple of other light cycles. While the attraction itself looks cool, I wouldn't call it well themed because it really does offer very little in the way of content. This got me thinking though. Magic Kingdom's most undeniably popular attraction is Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and is often cited as having really excellent theming. And no, it's quite literally almost just all rockwork and some trees. I wouldn't call that theming. This attraction pales in comparison to its closest relative, Big Thunder Mountain, which really did take theming to the next level when it premiered. Today's video is going to be a shorter one, but I am really interested in pointing out why Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is actually pretty poorly themed. It's also an attraction with a lot of other shortcomings, so let's take a dive into why this attraction is, to be blunt, quite the waste of space. As the last phase of the new Fantasyland expansion for Magic Kingdom, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train opened in 2014. Previous to its opening though, Snow White as an IP was represented with Snow White's Scary Adventures, which opened with the park in 1971. While definitely an attraction that showed its age, Scary Adventures was still a classic, and it really is infuriating that Disney leadership replaced it with a meet and greet. Across the path though, Mine Train was erected and took on the Snow White theme instead. From the outside, the theming consists mostly of small rocky mountains, with the train weaving in and out of the scenery. If I had to describe the style of the queue, I would call it generic. If you were to interchange it with the rockwork of Splash Mountain, very little would distinguish the two other than the actual content of the attractions themselves. When entering the queue, guests move into a forest alongside the mountains and make their way through it. The queue itself offers very little in the way of scenery, but does follow that brief trend of where Disney attempted to put interactive elements into its queues. It includes a minigame where guests can sort virtual gems, an interactive element where motion-triggered water spouts play musical notes, and some barrel setup that projects Snow White onto the ceiling when all the barrels are spun simultaneously. Like the other interactive elements added to some of Magic Kingdom's other queues, Disney quickly learned that while superficially entertaining to the guests, these elements ultimately just held up the line. The queue for the attraction itself is quite short, going from the outside forest into cover, and then into a mine shaft. When inside, guests board the train, which is designed to look like a minecart and is capable of swinging freely from side to side after it leaves the station. Once the train enters the ride track, it dips down a small hill and curves around to reach a lift hill. On the left, a minecart at the entrance of the mine can be seen, and guests can hear the singing of the dwarfs echo outside. Incredibly light on substance, I would consider this to be the first distinct scene of the ride. From here, the train swings around the track outside, and there are no scenes to witness. I think the intention here is to thrill guests, but to call Mine Train thrilling would be generous, as the target audience seems to be toddlers, judging from the lack of intensity. After this extended coaster portion plays out, the train moves into a mine and slows down, where the second scene plays out. Here, animatronic iterations of the dwarfs can be seen digging and singing in the mine, and as the train enters the second lift hill, a projection of the dwarf shadows shows them leaving for the day as they sing. From here, the train enters another gravity portion of the track that lacks the thrill it seems to be going for. The scenery is boring and generic, and finally the train reaches the last scene, which is the dwarf's cottage. Here, recycled animatronics from Scary Adventures can be seen dancing around, and the evil queen, disguised as the old hag, can be seen spying in the window. Once ready, the train moves back into the station where guests disembark. To be frank, Mine Train fails on a number of levels. First, the coaster's theming is incredibly minimal. I always see people say, "Oh, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train has the best theming in the Magic Kingdom." Really? Because I don't see it. It's as generic as Disney can make it. Rockwork and trees might look nice, but it doesn't constitute theming. Second, the actual ride portion is incredibly lacking. There are only 3 distinct scenes. First is the minecart, and I think I'm actually being rather generous by calling it a scene. Second is the mine itself, which I think is the only substantial portion of the attraction. Third is the cottage, which also barely constitutes a scene. Otherwise, the focus of the ride seems to be the gravity portions, which underdeliver in the worst way possible. One could argue that the coaster is meant for kids, but then I point to Goofy's Barnstormer. That's also a coaster aimed towards small children, but feels like it has a decent degree of intensity that's enough for them to handle. In contrast, Mine Train is completely devoid of thrill completely, resulting in its gravity portions being, well, boring and ultimately pointless. I initially brought up Big Thunder Mountain in the intro because Mine Train is often cited as the 4th mountain attraction of Magic Kingdom. I don't agree because it's simply not marketed that way, but its closest relative as an attraction is Big Thunder Mountain itself because it's a mine train that runs through rockwork. However, I feel that Thunder Mountain is superior in almost every respect. First, while definitely step up in intensity, Thunder Mountain is also targeted towards a family audience, and not toddlers exclusively. Second, the theming of Thunder Mountain far exceeds what Mine Train is even attempting to do. Initially, the Orange Mesa rockwork might not appear to be any more detailed than the generic German forest, but it's the small and distinct details that make it stand out. The queue itself is full of far more detail than what Mine Train is offering, and while it suffers from the same issue of its interactive elements holding up the line, there's still a lot of variety in distinct visual elements found throughout. When the train leaves the station, the attraction itself offers a number of distinct and memorable scenes that flesh out the world of the ride. First, guests encounter the bats and then climb the first lift hill alongside extensive caverns. As the train exits, it moves through a gravity portion with admittedly little in the way of detail. However, it moves up to the next distinct element, which is the sunken town. The train does move quite quickly through this scene, but there's a lot of detail that one can pick up on repeat ride-throughs. The train enters the second lift and offers a scenic view of the iconic hoodoo that defines the shape of Thunder Mountain. The train now exits the lift and brings riders past mountain goats, before entering another gravity portion. Coming up on the backside of the mountain, the train moves past abandoned mining equipment and into the third lift hill, which constitutes another scene itself. Here, the train sways over uneven track as the tunnel simulates a collapse, and then the train descends into another gravity portion where it swings down by the waterfront. Finally, the train moves into the hot springs and through a dinosaur skeleton, offering a head chopper element with the scenery. Moving past some more mining equipment, the train finally moves back into the station and guests disembark. Already we can see that Big Thunder Mountain offers a number of distinct and memorable elements and scenes. First, there are the bats and caverns, there's the sunken town, there's the goats, there's the collapsing mine, and finally the hot springs. In the gravity portions between the distinct sections, there's also a lot more detail and variety than what Seven Dwarfs Mine Train offers. While there is absolutely nothing there but indistinct rockwork, Thunder Mountain instead offers little details like cactus, cattle skulls, and miscellaneous tools found throughout. The scenic element of the rockwork itself is also far more pronounced and interesting in comparison to what Mine Train is offering. Essentially, Thunder Mountain shines because it offers a number of distinct and memorable elements, relying on a lot of subtle detail the Mine Train couldn't be bothered with. So that begs the question, why is Seven Dwarfs Mine Train the single most popular attraction at Magic Kingdom? I understand the idea that it's an introductory coaster to toddler-aged children, but it suffers from actually being really dumbed down. It was created with the assumption that little children are completely incapable of handling any thrilling element, even though Goofy's Barnstormer is a prominent counterexample. It's kind of like the difference between newer and older Disney films. While the newer animated Disney films are fine, they're carefully manicured to not allow the audience to feel any extended sense of sadness or anxiety, always undercut by a happy moment or by humor. In contrast, if we use the death of Bambi's mother as an example, it reveals how sanitized newer Disney films are in comparison. Walt Disney himself respected the ability of children to process events emotionally, and so while sad, this remains an iconic moment of the film. Mine Train very much feels like a newer Disney film, in that the thrill element is completely sanitized because it might scare the odd toddler or two. If you remove the thrill element from a coaster, then what's the point? Mine Train also suffers from pretty poor theming as well. Like Slinky Dog Dash, it's now part of a new trend of Disney coasters aimed at the youngest of children, but with the cheapest theming possible. The rockwork and scenery itself is bland and boring, especially when juxtaposed with the design philosophy behind Big Thunder Mountain. It also contains a measly 3 scenes, only one of which I think is even substantial. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, to be frank, is a giant waste of space. It fails as a coaster, it fails as a themed experience, and finally, it fails with capacity. While I have criticized the lack of thrill, the average person sees it and flocks over there because on the outside, it really does seem like the perfect introductory e-ticket for toddlers. However, if you've ridden it, you've likely discovered yourself that it's not at all worth the wait. The queue itself is often spilling out all over Fantasyland, and that's made even worse when FastPass is in place. I've waited through a full queue from the entry sign without FastPass, and the entire wait is 40 minutes. However, when Disney adds FastPass into the equation, the wait time suddenly jumps to almost 2.5 hours, really making for one of the most wasteful experiences that one could devote their time to. For all the criticism I have of newer Disney attractions, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train was the start of the fall of Disney parks under Bob Iger. It reveals a lack of creativity within the company, full of people who are incapable of designing attractions that are engaging or connect with their target audience. We only need to look at Big Thunder Mountain to see the discrepancies in talent. I'm interested to hear from my audience though. While I admit that I can't find a single redeeming factor to this attraction, I do see that it remains popular, even with lukewarm general reception. I have to ask, if you like this ride, why? I'm genuinely curious. As always, you can help this video reach a wider audience by simply hitting the thumbs up, and it's a really easy thing to do to help the channel out. If you enjoy these types of video essays, I also recommend sharing it around with other people who might be interested in theme park content, and I always suggest hitting the subscribe button with bell notification to be alerted when new videos are released.